Yo, the Black Anglo-Saxon. Welcome to another episode from the hood to the hill. When we back today again, and we're gonna be talking about this situation where we had the California warehouse fire burn down. I really want to go over this because even though I agree and feel it in terms of sentiment, I don't think it's a good strategy. I don't think it's something that we should lean into. And I don't think it's something that we should encourage moving forward. Because who really pays when rage takes the wrong target? And I want that to be the framing of today's discussion because though things have good intentions, sometimes they still can miss the mark in what it is we are trying to achieve. And I think we need to be very, very, very careful about how we navigate this situation because um, it will give license to those people, those maniacs who would love for the opportunity to add more draconian laws into these specific environments that we find ourselves navigating to further entrench us into an environment where we cannot move, navigate, build, and access the actual resources and levers to be able to change things structurally for an extended period of time. So, what I'm going to do is, per usual, I'm going to share my screen so we can go over this article. It's from The Guardian, which whom I really like. It's a worker who allegedly set fire to the California warehouse, compares self to Luigi Mangione. And for those of you all who may not know, Luigi Mangione was the gentleman who took arms up against the healthcare CEO. I forget his name, but in the same fashion, it was celebrated. And it was one of those things that, in terms of sentiment, I understand the frustration. I understand the position of where we are right now with society in terms of our, I wouldn't even say leadership class. I would say those who own the asset owners of the society, those who create and own the structures of society. They unfortunately do not listen. And I want to say, even in the Luigi Mangione case, unfortunately, the gentleman that he took arms up against, even though I understand the point, I need people to also understand on the back end of that, you aren't necessarily targeting or you aren't necessarily addressing the actual issue because he is a figurehead of what is to take place, right? And so this is an employee who allegedly burned down a California warehouse, compared himself to Luigi Mangione, and a message to coworkers setting the fire. And this happened out in Los Angeles. Shamel, I don't know his last name, 29, has been charged with several counts of felony and state arson after a massive fire destroyed Kimberly Clark paper products warehouse in Ontario, California, about an hour outside of LA. The warehouse fire broke out at 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday, with police arresting the suspect. Shortly after, the fire quickly progressed into a six-alarm blaze with about 175 firefighters responding to the emergency, and this resulted in 500 million in paper products destroyed, as well as the $150 million warehouse. The fire investigators said such and such texted a co-worker after the blaze, comparing himself to Mangione, who is facing charges for Brian Thompson's murder in December 2024. And it says, look, America is founded on free enterprise and capitalism, says Bill Essely, and the first assistant United States attorney from the Central District of California, during the press conference. Anyone who attacks our values, our way of life, our system, which provides the best goods and services to most people, we're going to come after aggressively. And police said on Friday that the video footage posted on social media also shows the suspect setting fire to toilet paper and other combustibles in the warehouse. Now, I am going to stop it right there because I want to go into this and have this conversation in a very careful manner because, like I said, um, we have to get to the point when workers lash out at institutions, through destructive acts, the insulated ownership, because we have to understand that these people are very insulated when they have these assets because the people who in which are trying to make the point to, they have insurance, they have other things that they've leveraged up against this property and up against this business, and they have ways to circumvent and mitigate and get out of and pivot away from that. And on top of that, you are in some ways doing more damage to your colleagues and coworkers who I'm sure might be out of a job at this point just due to the overall damage of the warehouse. And then also at the same time, that will probably end up in cuts to labor to make up for that dollar amount. And again, this is not something that I specifically agree with, but we know and we understand how corporations and we understand how this class of people operate. And so we have to understand that those cuts will be made to the people who you are working with or the person who you potentially texted. And they are going to be the ones who suffer the most because even if the funds are lost, if they didn't have insurance, you also have to understand that the people in these C-suite level execs, they have relationships, they have networks, and they have ecosystems that they can go on and latch on and attach themselves to find additional work. They will be okay. So when you go and you do these things, you have to understand the consequences and the long term stakes that are on the back end of that action. And you have to really think about who it is you're actually hurting. Because did this hurt capital or did it hand capital a new opportunity? And I want to bring up this uh, picture that I have because I talk about disaster capitalism. I talked about that in a few of my episodes when it comes to these disasters, when it comes to these incidents that we have, whether it be wars, whether it be natural disasters, whether it be protests. These businesses, these capital infrastructures know how to co-opt and take advantage of the actual moment, right? And so I'm going to bring this up because I just kindly want to illustrate how this process works a little bit. Because here, just take a look at this. So, capital feeds off disaster and loss. And if you see the disaster to profit cycle, it's going to be at the top here. So, disaster strikes, you get the fire, the flood, the pandemic, or whatever, right? And then you got the immediate damage, the wages, they vanish, the business is disrupted. Cool. The community is also destabilized. Cool. So then when you come into this, we have to understand that mechanism around narrative control. And you always hear me talk about narrative control, framing the story, and why that's important to what it is, the work that we're talking about doing and how we are going about building, because it is necessary to who controls the story, because to who controls the story controls the leverage and the power within that situation. And I'm gonna remember that because I'm gonna talk about that in the end. Now, this opens up a policy window. So think 9/11, the housing crisis. Think of all of these potential ways that somebody can think of a rule, think about an incentive structure, or think about a de-incentive structure that's built on the actual narrative, even though it's coming out of something true. You have to always be cognizant that people are creating stories around this. And the people who are creating stories, the asset owner class, already have tons of leverage. So this is not about me saying that there is no answer. This is not about me saying that people are powerless. I am talking about being very thoughtful, very precise, and very calculated in what it is that you're doing and how you understand the whole process. So, You have the insurance payouts, like I mentioned. You get the tax breaks, you get the contracts, you get the land grabs. Because when you do stuff like that, it depreciates the value, and then it allows for a person who is heavily liquid, or somebody who has that equity, or somebody who has that venture capital, to come in and buy those and recreate and further entrench themselves into the actual positionality that you're trying to get them out of. So they rebuild stronger. Who pays? We pay. What we have to understand in America is a lot of debt, and a lot of the bad things are socialized, while the capital class, the ownership class, is able to take those profits for themselves. So you got loss being socialized, while the profits are being individually extracted. And that's where we see this calcification over time just explode. And so you see the insurance companies, they collect the premiums, the corporations get bailouts and subsidies, investors, the private security, everybody expands, everybody eats off of these moments. And we end up paying because communities lose stability and resources, the mental and physical health declines, the local businesses suffer, and public services get cut because, like I said, they aren't going to cut themselves off, right? And I'm not saying that this isn't perfect. And so let's talk about before the disaster. You got, that's not really accurate in this situation, but you got decent paying jobs. The human labor has some type of leverage. Um, Even though we don't have as much as we would like, there is leverage there. But what you have to understand is that they'll use this as an excuse to bring in or not bring in workers, or bring in automation. And then you get increased surveillance. And you also have the corporate control expanding, because now they have a reason to lobby, and they have a narrative to lobby on. And so you see this with the examples at the bottom: Hurricane Katrina, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, or the C-19 pandemic, right? You got the California wildfires that took place a little bit back, and the 9/11. So the lesson in this is disaster doesn't break capital, it builds the next machine. And this is what you have to think about when you ask yourself, why why does this Leviathan continue to seem to get stronger? And it is because it is highly trained in optimizing disaster, chaos, and coming in and feeding off of that and building scales. And if you've ever seen the movie The Decimation of Smog, right? The Hobbit, right? You understand this armor as something that is so almost so impenetrable because of how nimble it is, how flexible it is, how calcified it is. You have to understand that you got to strike it right there. For those who haven't seen The Hobbit, Smog was the uh, beast who hoards gold, and the greed of the dwarfs allowed the Smog to come in and take refuge. Now, Smog has been terrorizing the land. He is a tool of the larger uh, enemy, Sauron. But Small can only be killed if you get him like right here under this scale, like right here. And it's not really a scale; you got to penetrate it. And this is why having the through line and being precise is so important. You can't just hit it anywhere. You can't just whack a mole. You have to figure out what is at the core of this situation and of this issue, because otherwise we will find ourselves in a situation where we have the local workers, all of these people being affected because we've already notified ourselves and understand that the aristocracy is serving the upper echelon, the builders of society, the financiers of society, right? And so that's how they salvage that. And so the desperation, why does it get weaponized? You got to explore the random destruction that weakens the labor solidarity, right? And understand that strikes build leverage, but they have to be done in a monolith. This is why you always hear me talk about Black people needing to be a monolith and stop running from that. And when I say a monolith, I'm not talking about monolithic in terms of sameness. I'm talking about monolithic in terms of direction. When a tsunami is coming, we have to understand that infrastructure is like the obelisk, right? Are those that will stand, because atomization, when everybody is spread out, everybody is running, and you get rugged individualism, you have to understand it's easy for the tsunami to come through and wash away all. Now, this is not to say that even in the form of an obelisk and even in the form of, what do you call it, being a monolithic structure, that we won't have people who fall off, because as we know, salt water will erode a rock over time. But we will have a structure that is worth salvaging rather than trying to run, or rather, we can't outrun this, to be honest. We can't outrun it. We got to face it. And that's part of why I'm saying that we have to organize. And part of that, why I say, it's the CPR method, centralization is essential for me to that piece, because you have to figure out how to flow everything and streamline everything through these same channels, and not in a way that it deleverages the community and it deleverages those of us who already don't have leverage, because there will be laws, there will be consequences, there will be things that come after that. I don't know how far y'all memory go back, but just a few months ago, we had Trump renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War, and we saw come out of that on the ground trainings. We see all of these things taking place, and let that not be a coincidence in your mind. Understand, as I have said before, that these moments, these things are being prodded. We're being squeezed. We're being really, really, really pinched, because the reaction is the thing that they want, because they want justification to do the atrocity that they've already planned out in their mind. But right now, they do not have the narrative to do so. And this is why narrative is so important. So you got to understand that the elites, they prefer disorder. Power can handle random anger better than coordinated action. What do they fear? General strikes, consumer boycotts, worker councils, union density, and cross-class coalition. And this is why one of my things and plans and objectives is to, especially in the Black community, is bridge the class division that we have. It's too much poor versus fake boule, bougie niggas. It's too much. It's too many different uh dividing lines in our community. And when I talk about the consumer boycott, I am again talking about doing it in a monolithic way, but I'm talking about not that weak target stuff, but I'm talking about strategically pulling back and contracting in such a way that it shapes the way the communities move. I'm talking about pulling back about how we do events, how we get to events, how the event planners expect people to attend events, or how many they expect them to attend events. Because as we know, when you have an event in a city, when you have an event in a state, there is a whole level of business. There is a whole level of not, what do you call it? I was about to say premises. There's a whole level of protocols. There's a whole level of procedures that are activated from the government side, the business side, the corporate side. Everybody is coming. So when you have these conferences, states love that. They like to host those things because it is a money grab. So we have to be strategic and aware of that and say, all right, cool. Now, our attention is finite, our time is finite, and our money is finite. But that's not to say we still don't have anything to leverage. What we have is the ability to manage through scarcity. We can create ways in which we move that take from. And unfortunately, yes, some businesses, some institutions will be hurt by this. But that is the point. Because think about it this way, the business community in your state, wherever you are, they push up when things are happening, when things are taking place and things are not going good, they pushing up on government. And because they have the tax base that they do, and because they provide the foot traffic that they do for the state has a symbiotic relationship with them. So they are going to listen. So when business is hurt, they're going to push up and be like, yo, y'all got to do something about this. But I am going to communicate to the business, look, this is, y'all always say, don't hate the player, hate the game. This is part of the game. We're trying to reestablish, realign, and balance this game out. So we need you, business owner, sir, to tell them what they doing is wild and reckless. We need you back on our side. We need you taking pictures with us. We need you being a part of our Leviathan, not being co opted and captured by the Leviathan of the state, because the state, unfortunately, has been captured by the financiers that, again, are not evil. Again, you always hear me say, take it away from evil, take it away from good or bad. They are operating on an incentive structure that says people are going to come, people are going to do this. This is how we're going to go because our bottom line is keeping the state afloat, keeping the human capital afloat. They need us. We still have leverage. Don't ever get it twisted. We are the true Leviathan. Our founders said that explicitly. They understood that it's not just the mob, it's the ideological alignment. That's what they were in fear of. Who cares about a brainless mob? Who cares about an idiot who's willing to do anything that causes damage to the very people that he's trying to save because he can't see 10, 30, 50, 60 years down? Because you got to understand, they have everybody from top to bottom thinking and operating in quarterly reports. The problem with that is that if you do everything based on quarterly reports, and it's only about money, you miss the consequences of how said thing works and how the damage on the back end of that is. So, what actually precious power? Coordinated labor organizing, mutual aid, tenant unions, consumer campaigns, political education, which is why we're here now, because you need people to actually know, you need people to actually understand, because understanding is the first step. You need to actually sit down and take a break, take a breather, woosah, think about what it is you're doing, because we're playing in a realm that is built on long games and not short games. And we have to be in a space to where whistleblowers and people who have access, who decide to position themselves with people, have a means of protection, have a means of a landing point. Because if they don't, they will continue to remain silent. And the remaining of silence is the thing that allows everything to permeate and concentrate itself and calcify and become hard as a rock. Remember, rage is energy, discipline is power. Sometimes you can be mad, but you have to be very, very careful about what it is that you're doing. So I know that everybody want to wild out and we want to encourage that behavior, but be very careful about the behavior that we're encouraging, because the laws that come behind that will, again, you hear me talk about, it will cover the glitch. It will cover the patch. And what will happen is that we will find ourselves, we already find ourselves in a position where we self-censoring, and we'll find ourselves in a deeper position to where we're being so monitored that there won't be any type of movement outside of the eye and the scope of Sauron himself, right? So you got to ask yourself, who suffers? Do isolated acts of destruction help workers or do they discredit them? Will future laws target criminals only or workers generally? Why is labor organizing treated as more dangerous than exploitation? Because again, even for all of the illegal immigration that people love to talk about and all of the sweeps that they doing at these corporations, ask yourself why you've never seen a CEO get walked out. Because they knowingly are pillaging and extracting low wages from these people because that is the name of the game. But you never see them out. You never see them get walked out in cuffs. So they get the double whammy and double dip. And so you gotta strike accordingly. If you strike blindly, power adapts. And I keep telling y'all that these people are highly intelligent. Just because you may think that they bad or they evil or whatever, however you see it, does not take away the genius of what it is they put in place, the immaculates of what it is they built. I pay homage to my oppressors because my oppressors are geniuses, wicked geniuses, but geniuses. And some people may disagree with that. Some people may think that I'm crazy for saying that. But until you acknowledge, until you really sit down, because I get it, people want to say that they don't deal dwell in meritocracy and they have all of this leverage built, but you got to understand how the leverage was built. And I get that people are going to want to say that, oh, well, they had guns, they did this, they had power, but you got to understand the psychology of it, the capacity and the nature to be able to do it, even though it is heathenist. You got to. Because if you don't, you find yourself running in circles because knowledge is not power. Power is power, especially in this moment that we're in right now. So please like this video, share this video, leave a comment, tell me what you think, because I'm not saying don't do anything. But what I am saying is think about what it is that you're doing. What I am saying is pull back, slow down, because these type of things are very precise, very complex. And look, we're not in the 1950s, the 40s, where the society was complex, but not as complex. We have so many different more complexities now. The thinkers that we need now have to be eons beyond our parents, grandparents. They are not dealing with the level of complexities that we're dealing with. They are not dealing with the smoke and mirrors that we're dealing with. The AI, where you can't tell what's real or unreal. We got financial institutions who are spitting numbers out and making up numbers and making up through these equations and algorithms that are incomprehensible. They did not have that. They did not have all of these different global factors and the economy being attached and so entrenched and intertwined and interwoven with each other. We have to be smarter. And that requires sometimes pulling back, slowing down, figuring out where you're standing and what you're standing on before you start to begin to take next steps. But let me know what y'all think. It is what it is. I will catch y'all